6:37. Now, junior doctors are threatening more strikes next winter unless a Labour government agrees a 35% pay rise. The British Medical Association's leaders have told The Times they'd be willing to sit down with Sir Keir Starmer on July the 5th if he became Prime Minister. Well, thousands of its members are preparing to walk out next week in a 5-day strike, ending 2 days before the general election. Let's speak to Victoria Selwyn, who is a junior doctor. Morning, Victoria.
Good morning, Chloe. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, it's always so important to speak to junior doctors so that people like us who aren't working in the NHS have a true understanding of what it is like right now. Before we talk about those realities, first of all, do you agree with the junior doctor strike going ahead during a general election campaign? Will you be going on strike?
I'm not going to discuss too much about the strikes because I would leave that up to the British Medical Association reps, but personally, I will be striking because I agree that we do work in less than optimal working conditions. We're understaffed, we're underfunded. This has been the case for longer than I've been working as a junior doctor, and things aren't really getting any better any soon.
Do you think it's relevant that it's during a general election campaign, and whether that's just kind of politicising the issue in this sort of 6-week campaign?
I think it's making the public aware of the issues at the most pertinent time so that they have the information that they need to go ahead and vote for who they think is going to support the NHS the best.
So just give us a sense of reality for junior doctors working in the NHS on a daily basis. When you go in for a shift, what are you facing?
I mean, where do I even start? The list is ever ending, never ending. For example, just the basic things, finding equipment and things that you'd need on the wards. For example, if you're in an emergency and you need to take some blood tests from someone and you need maybe 5 or 6 pieces of equipment, there should be like a drawer where you'd find everything, but the drawers aren't ever stocked properly. So you have to go either find a nurse to help support you find everything, or you spend 20 minutes just going around trying to find the little bits you need. Even the simplest problems, like all of the IT systems are super slow and don't work and crash. Even just those simplest things. But in terms of, we are always understaffed. They say that, we have minimal staffing levels, which are safe, but when the emergency department is full, when the wards have so many unwell patients at one time, and there's maybe 2 junior doctors and someone that could be supporting them but asleep on call, and you wake them up to bring them in, and you don't really feel like that's the best thing that you want to do, but you do it for the care and the safety of the patients. When there is a list in the emergency department of 20, 30 patients to see in it, it is just overwhelming. And we're facing burnout issues because of this. 12.5-hour shifts wouldn't be so bad if you managed to get all of your breaks that you were meant to have during it. But by the end of a shift, you're just so tired. The night shifts, you'll be worried about driving home. You're carrying home with you the stories and the worries about patients that you're thinking, is this patient going to be safe? Because we just don't feel like we have the support to be able to make sure patients' safety is a top priority, I guess.
Gosh, there's so much to unpick in that. Thank you for just laying it out so eloquently. First of all, you talked about patient safety there. You talk about your tiredness. You talk about being understaffed. I'm not for a moment undermining your ability to do your job. But do you worry that patients are being put at risk, whether that is because of understaffing or the fact that you and your colleagues are so exhausted?
I think definitely both of those things are an issue. I also think that because we're so understaffed, we keep patients safe as best we can. In emergencies, those patients would take priority over any other patients, but that could also mean that patients are in hospital longer than they need to be because, we might have a plan that patient requires a scan, but it might not be the most urgent thing on the list. We always prioritise patients that may be being discharged from hospital that day, making sure their medication to go home with is ready and their discharge letter is ready. But then other patients may be sitting on the ward. They could be ready to go home, but the scan, we need to request it, we need to discuss it with the radiologist. And these things take time. You can't keep kind of chasing up and following up to make sure when these things will happen. So someone may be in hospital 1 day, 2 days, 3 days longer than they really need to be because we're waiting for something to happen and we don't have the staff to be kind of chasing things. And then when people are in hospital longer, they have increased risks of clots and hospital-acquired infections. So as much as, yes, patient care and safety is our priority, and in emergencies our teams are amazing, and even if we feel rushed off our feet, we'll still be running when the bleeps go off to wherever it is in the hospital. But it does sometimes feel like we're not giving them our 100% because there's basically too many patients and not enough staff to get all the jobs done.
I'm also interested, when you were talking about drawers not being properly stocked, what is that down to? Because people are got too much to do and they're not having the time to restock it, or you haven't actually got the things that need to restock it with. Why is that happening? Because that seems like a huge waste of time, running around for 20 minutes trying to find stuff.
It really, really is. And it happens almost every single time. And it's so frustrating. There are kind of designated blood test taking trays, and you go into it and you expect to find everything that you would need in it. But I think, maybe it is someone's job to restock the trays maybe every day or once a week, but it doesn't seem to happen. I always have to go and ask the nurses, like, do you know where I could find one of these? I've checked in kind of the normal area. Where would you suggest I go to look next? And I'll end up going to 2 other trays and another store cupboard before I've got everything that I need. Or sometimes you just have to make do with what you find.
Gosh, well, thank you for explaining all that. I mean, I guess that in some ways is almost a separate issue to the pay issue, isn't it? There's clearly there need to be more staff, need to retain junior doctors, there need to be, I guess, more people trained, there needs to be potentially more money put into the NHS to sort this out, or certainly, reallocated within the NHS. Talk to us a little bit about the 35% pay rise, which the BMA is sticking to as a line of what they want, restoring pay back to 2008 levels. Both this government, the current government, is saying not realistic, can't afford it, and clearly that's why the strike action is still going ahead. But even Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary, who many people expect will become the Health Secretary because they expect Labour to form the next government, of course might not happen, but that is what the polls are suggesting. He's saying 35% isn't realistic, but he wants to sit down on day one and try and get this sorted. Do you feel there is some room for compromise there on the 35%?
I think we will have to wait and see what happens in discussions. Like I said, I won't speak too much about the strikes because I don't feel that I'm the best placed person to do so. But
I just mean personally, I'm not expecting you to talk on behalf of the BMA. I just wonder what you think about that.
I think we have to stick to our guns. I think we have to be confident in the fact that we know we are asking for our work to be appreciated, not just the pay and the working conditions, but also, we put so much into training to become a doctor. I was at university for 8 years in total, and now I've done 2 years of foundation training. So that's 10 years of my life I've already kind of given to training up to work as part of the NHS. And I wouldn't say for 1 second I regret it, and I knew when going into training as a doctor that these were issues that I would probably face, and I love my job and I love the positives that I get out of it, but it makes it really difficult. Another thing that you mentioned is increasing the number of places and the number of doctors. We have so many junior doctors that want to get into different specialty training posts, and there's a massive bottleneck in this. So people are kind of paused and stopped from progressing in their career because there just aren't enough spaces for people to do so. For example, I would love to study psychiatry and become a psychiatrist. There was 450 places in the entire UK with, I think, 3,000 or 4,000 people applying for those places. So you've got thousands of people that are going to potentially take jobs outside of clinical medicine and maybe move abroad because there's just not these opportunities here in the NHS.
And is that because we only need 450 psychologists and maybe 3,500 people want to do it? Because, I mean, journalists, you'd have tens of thousands of people wanting to be journalists, but you actually only need a certain number of journalists. I'm just wondering if that's because we don't need that, and maybe junior doctors just have to understand that they have to maybe go into a different area.
I think all of the specialties are oversubscribed with ratios of 7 people applying for one place, 8 people applying for one place. We need doctors in all specialties. Psychiatry is an ever-growing specialty. We have an increasing number of people with mental ill health. So I definitely don't think we don't need more psychiatrists. Also, training more psychiatrists would allow those who are currently working to have maybe sit back a little bit and kind of deal with their self-care and reduce burnout amongst the current staff that we have. So I definitely think they need to increase the number of places that there are for all specialty trainings. I know that takes time and it takes money, but increasing the number of people that are training at medical school and then not increasing the number of specialty places to train afterwards is just creating a bottleneck of unhappy people that have studied for so long to be able to get into this profession, perhaps to be in a certain specialty, and kind of having their dreams squandered.
Victoria, really good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Chloe.
That is Victoria Selwyn. She's a junior doctor. A really interesting insight, actually, into sort of the daily challenges of being a junior doctor. But I guess that is almost a separate issue, isn't it, to the 35% pay claim. She's saying very much they should stick to the guns. Got quite a lot of views on this morning. Lots of you have got in touch. Should we read some of them now very quickly?